Many of them will never use a toilet unassisted.
That part is true. I have a team of penguins that helps me poop. They hold little pieces of toilet paper and they go. Think of autism as variability of the human nervous system. If I can condense it to like this, the fewest words, and still capture what it is, which is why someone like myself, whenever you experience discomfort about a person's disability or about autism or someone's autistic profile or presentation, don't let your discomfort create confidence. Let your discomfort create curiosity, please. That's my plea to anybody who wants to know more about this. You might recognize some of your own stuff in here, but this article is excellent. It really lays out the way it is different for different people, and I think it's a fantastic primer for people. So okay, we got that done. Now let's listen to this fucking Nazi. RFKjr has things to say. He's trying to do eugenics on autistic people. This is a nightmare. This freaking weirdo. So here, we're going back a bit. I had wanted to do this on the previous show. April 17th, 2025. RFKjr describes autism as an epidemic happening to our children, as something that maybe we need to eradicate, something to fix, maybe even a list, a group of people who need rounding up. I'm autistic, by the way. Have not yet been formally diagnosed. However, I'm 100% certain. Rarely would I even describe. I would say 99 point. I got to keep a slight bit open for. Yes, I have. Among the see, here I go. This is hyperverbal autism. That would be a better name for this podcast, to be honest. I had accurately mapped it. I have really good pattern detection. I have a great bullshit detector. Mine is of the hyper empathic. I cry easily. I have these deep, rich emotions. I have an involuntary imagination that creates emotions in my body and in my brain. I don't just, when I imagine something, I don't just imagine it. My emotion generator goes off and I feel it. And so I've always been very sensitive to things. These days I'm in a state of burnout. My light and noise sensitivities are real rough and really difficult. So a lot of interesting ways that autistic people present and manifest. I'm going to go on more about it soon. But the last thing we need is for the federal fucking government putting a guy like this, a high profile position. HHS, Health and Human Services Secretary, is a high profile position in any government, I guess. But he's like a famous celebrity and a Kennedy, known for his hiking with Hank Thompson, his falconry practice, his scooping up roadkill bears, although I actually defend taking meat for roadkill to turn into meat, assuming you're high confidence it's fresh. Obviously, I wouldn't necessarily say all roadkill is worthy of becoming a sandwich, but if you see it happen, better someone eat it than not, right? But that's okay, whatever. I did a story. That's a video of that on the channel if you want to watch me talk about it. But this dude has so much more of a profile, so it's fucking dangerous what's happening. And among the interesting things I didn't expect when I read an article about autism, I didn't decide I was autistic after that one article. I did months and months and months of research before I self-diagnosed. I use the term self-identified, but self-diagnosis is valid. The vast majority of people, well over 90%, who self-identify, who self-diagnose, go finally get formally diagnosed and then have it affirmed. Like, it's part of the process towards that. And we live in a really expensive and risky and dangerous, and it's especially more dangerous now that they want to make lists for doing eugenics against autistic people to get a formal diagnosis. There's not like there's much benefit to it anyway. I would still probably pursue it for the validation nature of it all. But yeah, and you can take online tests. I hate those fucking tests because I don't like the way they word the questions. It pisses me off, which is probably the most autistic way to do it. Just like, fuck this test. These questions don't make any sense. You should learn more. And I have an article. Let me just jump over to that just in case you leave. Go read neuroclastic.com, search for this, or I'll put it in the description. The headline, Autism is a Spectrum, doesn't mean what you think. Excellent primer. Please think of whenever you experience discomfort about a person's disability or about autism or someone's autistic profile or presentation, don't let your discomfort create confidence. Let your discomfort create curiosity, please. That's my plea to anybody who wants to know more about this. You might recognize some of your own stuff in here, but this article is excellent. It really lays out the way it is different for different people, and I think it's a fantastic primer for people. So, okay, we got that done. Now let's listen to this fucking Nazi talk about how he wants to eradicate this from my... Okay, I'm trying to withhold. I'm going to read my poem. I got a poem.
Anybody with common sense, Sean, would notice that, because the autism, this epidemic, is only happening in our children. It's not happening.
Wrong. Fuck you. Wrong. What do you think autistic children become? Butterflies. We become butterflies at age 18 and we fly back to the mothership. We fly down into the deeps of the ocean and join up with those aliens down there where Ed Harris breathes water and see with the alien in the movie Abyss. Anybody seen the movie Abyss?
Happening in people our age. And if it was better recognition, you'd see it in 70-year-old men. And I'll say this, I want to be very careful when I say it, because I've never seen...
First of all, the average, and I'd like to parse this information, so don't take this as like something you should necessarily quote. But like I've seen studies that show that the average lifespan for autistic people is in the 50s. And the average employment statistics around it ranges from study to study, as low as 40% unemployment. That's like the best number. But I've seen many in the 80 percentile. I've seen that one referenced a bunch. So let's just say that's overshooting a little bit. And depending on the type of autism a person might have, or the classification, and in 20 or 30 years, that language will be more refined. We'll have a better understanding of how to differentiate these groups. It's gone through a major transition from its rudimentary foundation of understanding in the 80s and 90s through other kind of folding in other traits and other profiles, and then in like expanding this concept of autism as a thing. And so, but the unemployment rate is in the 80 percentile. It's a very difficult thing to hold a job when you have social dysregulation or light noise sensitivity. I'm very much in that, because I can't deal with people noise, sound. Like I have a huge engine in me. I can do a lot on my own. I would love to try to live this life that I'm living with some income, meaning like it'd be so cool if I could do podcasting with an audience that like there was support. I'm not blaming anybody for not. I'm just saying like this is a stressful way to try, but I at least have some skills that I can offer, that I can do at my computer, that I can do within my own safe little world. Or a lot of the reason why this documentary happened is because of my autistic profile, but the lifespan being and probably averages greatly. If you find you don't die from autism in your 50s, hallmark of a lot of autistic folks though is executive dysfunction and self-care sort of behavior, and maintaining social connections and social relationships, and all of those things add up to. So autistic people are far more likely to experience addiction. I have experienced that. Far more likely to experience suicide, unaliving themselves. I never tried, but I've been close. I've planned, and I've experienced that myself. At least further down that road than anybody should ever go. And of course, you can go further. Not that it's a competition. That's a weird thing. But autistic people are far more likely to be victims of sexual assault, or victimized by scams, or victimized by various ways, to be abused, or to be kind of outcast, or just sort of socially exiled due to the difficulty distinguishing the masked self from the authentic self, and how that fits into their social world. There's studies that show people are sort of hostile, or at least maybe not that's not maybe the fair word, but they can identify something they dislike about somebody within seconds. And they can, like they do, studies with allistics versus autistics, allistic being non-autistic. And it shows that people who are allistic will immediately kind of feel something's off about a person who's autistic. Although autistic people tend to connect nicely with other autistic people. Among my history, the people I always felt like I never had friends in any stage, except maybe a couple times I had like one friend. And looking back on those times, were girls that I got along with too, when I finally, autistic people reach developmental stages at much later stages of their life, generally, myself included. didn't date till my mid-20s. First girlfriends were in my, and I spent some time, but turned out I was actually pretty good at it, by the way. Not bragging or anything, but I'm really funny. But fuck, I just wrecked it. I just ruined my damn brain thought there. But the consequences of social dysregulation and of autistics. Yeah. So like looking back at my story, a lot of autistic people, the people that I got along with, were probably somewhere on the spectrum themselves, perhaps. Not all of them necessarily, but it's a world of complexity that deserves people to listen with patience and curiosity. Instead, we have charlatans like this fucking guy on Sean Hannity. Fox News is essentially just a wing of the government. Let's just back up a little bit and just pick it up here. I'm going way too long. This is already like 45 minutes fucking podcast.
And I'll say this, I want to be very careful when I say it, because I've never seen a person with full-blown autism. I've seen many people with Asperger's and, on the spectrum who are my age. I've never seen anybody with full-blown autism. That means nonverbal, non-toilet trained. Is that
non-toilet trained, like a dog. So the DSM differentiates autism, the DSM-5, which is a diagnostic and statistical manual for diagnosing mental and physical disorders, I think. But it's recently updated. I don't know exactly when, but it used to be different. Asperger's was probably what I would have been diagnosed with if I had been tested or screened in the 90s or something like that. That connects back to, and I haven't fully researched this, so grain of salt here, but a Nazi doctor named Hans Asperger, who identified differences within people who were presenting in ways that were creating, issues for the eugenicists of the times, the Nazi, the progenitors to the Republican Party. Of course, in America, the conservative movement is a progenitor to the Nazi Party, because this whole thing foundationally is all about power and hierarchy and colonial institutions of race supremacy being imposed. Which is what we're experiencing today still. But the Asperger's would be a somewhat more, I don't like using this phrasing, but like a more useful type. Like I could be put into a room and told to do stuff, and I could have some skills that could be used. Other people with autism, another way to say it, who are autistic, there's a kind of a language debate within the autism world, not that it's this big dividing line, but some people say I have autism. Some people say I am autistic. I lean on I am autistic. The same way you don't say I have homosexuality, you say I am homosexual, right? Like I'm that's just a thing. There's a language sensitivities there, but someone using one or the other, you can kind of gauge their intentionality from the tone and all that other stuff. But one or the other doesn't mean that they're wrong, right? It's valid, either one, or however it goes. But there's a lot of misunderstandings about it. You don't catch it. It's not a transmissible. It's not a condition. It's not an illness. Although you could maybe call it a condition. I might quibble a little, but it's not a disease. It's not an illness. It's not a disorder. It's a neurotype. That's the best word, in my opinion, for it. And so within the DSM, there's 3 grades, and it's basically about needs, support needs. So there's level 1, level 2, and level 3. 3 being the type of autism where they do require far more care, daily care, difficulties, caring for themselves, and those are the families. And level 2 is sort of an in between, and level 1 would be, I would probably be on the level 1 area of it. I would imagine, I don't know, for some reason I kind of think I might be somewhere along closer to the 2 side of it as well, for various reasons I'm probably not going to tell you right now. But like it's complex, and with anything, this isn't math. It's not as simple as just testing your blood and tracking a number. So it requires language reporting. It requires practitioners being trained in latest knowledge and latest research, exchanging information with other practitioners so that we can maintain the community's wisdom about what we're looking for and how to differentiate these different things. I think of it like psychology, and this is an overall thing for psychological concepts, like a black hole, right? So you can't really study it. We can only study its effects on things around it. And I mean, it's for like human psychology in general. It's a lot easier to research other maladies that can be tested, that can be blood tests and other ways, or just self-reporting. And so it's all just a guess mainly. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm saying that over time, though, our guessing gets more accurate. Over time, we actually start to see and detect more black holes. We've been able to photograph a couple of them so far now using really cool telescope configurations. They basically use the entire Earth, multiple telescopes, and they turn the Earth itself into a telescope the size of the Earth. That's roughly what happens as to why coordination within these. See, now I'm getting back into my space stuff. Sorry, it's one of my special interests. So over time, though, as psychological concepts, we can't enter the black hole, but we can circle it, and we can map it better, and we can understand it better, and this language will improve. So you might hear the phrase high support needs versus low support needs. I think there's problems with calling someone low support needs because it makes it seem like they don't need any, or that they're fine without it, or that they're just a little bit quirky, when it's actually like a lifelong destabilizing and disabling thing to experience. And truly though, a world where we made sure autistic people were made whole and healthy and safe would be the best possible world for everybody. That is a world where we are caring for people and showing up for people and letting people be authentic and letting people be who they are, and with the love and the patience and the understanding that we can't all be fucking cogs in the capitalist soul grinder that we're trapped in. That would be a wonderful thing, and we should shoot for that, not just making it okay for autistic people. I'm saying for everybody. I sometimes conceptualize autism as pathological authenticity. It's a very difficult thing to, and then you introduce the concept of masking, which is a trauma response to early childhood dysregulations from your autistic. And I have this hypervigilance, I have this hyper awareness things internally and externally, very strong pattern detection, but I still struggle to know communications and accuracy. I can be very charming, I can be very funny, I can put words together, I can make people feel comfortable. All of that sort of sources from the self I had to develop involuntarily in order to conform to an authenticity that wasn't actually me as a child. And that, so it's like, but then ultimately though, and it's the stress of my working and the stress of not knowing I was autistic up until age 42, I was burning out and my mask was crumbling without even knowing what it was. A life of depression, a life of anxiety stuff. I've mentioned this before, but I had a period about 5 or 6 years ago where I was like just scared of dogs. All of a sudden I just couldn't handle seeing a dog without feeling fear. Any dog, little ones, big ones. I saw a dog and my body would rush with fear. And I wasn't ever scared of dogs. I think I could beat up most dogs, to be honest. Wouldn't want to. That would stress me out. That would be bad for everybody, not just the dog. One dog versus 100 men. Who would win? But and it was just like, but I was also self-aware, like, what the fuck? Why am I scared of dogs? Why, like, what the hell happened? I didn't get attacked by one. It's not like I can see maybe you're not afraid of dogs and you get into some spat and some dog bites you or something. And then like, oh fuck, now I'm scared of dogs. That kind of makes sense. That didn't happen. Weird. Stuff was just shifting. My whole foundation, my whole tectonics was just going haywire. I was having crying fits, all kinds of meltdowns. Had to fucking unionize my workplace in hopes of seeing a doctor. A lot of stress. I think stress plays a big role. And on top of all of that, what I just described, this podcast is gonna fucking take forever. We add cultural conditioning. We add stressful childhood stuff that fucks up people who aren't autistic. So you get different sensitivities to different things. Think of autism as variability of the human nervous system. If I can condense it to like the fewest words and still capture what it is, which is why someone like myself, and I actually happen to be very coordinated. I have great rhythm. Left-handed. See? Look at that. I'm not left-handed, but I'm snapping with my left hand. What am I doing? I played, I don't know, but this is one of my proudest moments was, I was always kind of athletic, never really developed. I think I could have been like a really good college baseball player. I'm 6'3", good shoulders, ferocious concentration. I would have been like a really good, and I played softball. I was like, I could always throw spirals, and I had a good arm, and like tennis. I played tennis and chess in high school. But I was also like kind of a nut, for obvious reasons. And I played softball on a guy's team, and he's an athletic dude, like a good, one of those good athletic type guys. He goes, I was hitting home runs, not every single time. I would fuck up too. I had bad depth perception in the outfield, but I was good at pitcher and first base. Anyway, I was hitting good hit. I mean, I was good at it. I was like, I could hit the fucking, they called me Hammering Hank after a time, and eventually was on 4 different teams playing beer league softball in Chicago. But one of my times running the bases, the guy goes, wow, Hank, you're surprisingly graceful. Surprisingly graceful. I was so flattered. I loved hearing that because I know I'm awkward, but physically, autism doesn't mean awkwardness. Autistic people can be awkward for sure. Variability of the human nervous system, which is why someone like myself, who is a high I kind of land on high masking versus low masking. I know that's also a little bit too simplistic, but the kind of burnout and the sort of profile of the people I see and talking, and there's even this concept called, that's referred to as Aspie supremacy, which is sort of like this type of profile gets to speak a lot and gets to get attention because they can communicate. The fundamental thing that humans do is a little bit more accessible to someone who, like me, versus someone who is nonverbal, or versus someone who doesn't have the gumption that maybe, or I'm an introvert, but I'm an extra. I did stand-up comedy, and I'm putting my stupid fucking face on the internet. My dream is to be an author and a documentarian, because I don't like posting as much. I'd like to do 1 post every 4 years. That's honestly what I would love to do. I think like writing a book every 4 years and then like a movie or something, like that. Okay, let me do. So there's a lot of complexity to it, and there's a lot of politics mixed in with all of it, particularly in the terms of it's where it comes from and who started, and why do people, families that are struggling, because level 3 high support needs, maybe you'd say low masking. I don't know if I would say that, but like they have a profound need. And actually one of the terms you'll see, you can also disagree. I'm not saying these are all good or bad or whatever. I'm just relaying some of the information I've gathered watching autistic content for the last 3 years. Is profound autism is a word I've seen. I don't know if everybody agrees with that, but people get strong emotions about some of these terms, and that's fine. It's valid. But what this guy's doing is eugenics, and using autism as an excuse for Elon Musk's hailing fucking Hitler is offensive, because he's awkward. He doesn't know what he's doing. He has no idea. Bullshit. And then assigning vaccines as the cause of it, as these guys do. All the research has been done about that. Meaning like it's been very thoroughly researched, is enlisting the stress that families with an autistic person, and it's genetic is where it comes from. It's mostly shown to be genetic. I wouldn't rule out gestational influence. I wouldn't say that that's completely eliminated as a possibility. Just like we should build a world where autistic people are cared for and made to live whole and with dignity and with dignified existences, whether they can produce units for the fucking capitalist cog machine or not. We should produce a world where birthing persons are healthy and kept safe and can develop their child with the full potential that the human 3D printers are capable of. Eliminating environmental toxins, eliminating the stress of having to go to their fucking job, eliminating the stress of having to pay for all that expensive medical care and health care. High nutrient ice cream, high nutrient pickles. Isn't pickles and ice cream like the thing that you say about pregnant people all the time when they're craving stuff? But I'm saying, like, I'm not saying that I think that all autistic or the story of its origin is completely understood. We're still researching this stuff, but it's not vaccines. And it's very well researched that there's genetic components to it. Almost everybody who has autism or who is autistic shows and has stories of older relatives, people in their family who are neurodivergent in other ways or in ways that would be described as autism. He said, "There's no 70-year-olds." Well, as I said, the lifespan is in the 50s, and I think the people who die much younger are the more profound, the level 3 people. I think. I don't want to assign that. I'm not saying it's through no. It's truly because of the lack of the community support in this hyper individualistic hellscape of a fucking country that we have right now. Let me hear him say it.
It was better recognition. You'd see it in 70-year-old men.
It's very clear that there are plenty, and this is because autistic people talk about their older relatives about, oh, there's no autism in older people. Come down in my basement and look at my several thousand, matchbooks I've collected from fun dance clubs over all the years. Patty and Selma, Simpsons, anybody? Great joke. It's been around for a very long time. And because it's human variability of the nervous system, I'm so pissed at myself I have so much more podcasting to do today. Because it's human variability of the nervous system, you get different traits. You get different manifestations. You get different profiles, loadout, like a video game. Some have their trait cranked up a lot. It can be very spiky. I have it in one of the commonalities, not everybody, but is a very strong sense of justice. That's absolutely something underpinning the documentary about the Young Turks that I'm making. Tell the Truth, Jank. TellTheTruthJank.com. Go please check it out. Help an autistic guy get some justice for an injustice. That's what we're doing here. And you also get people where that variability means you can get manifestations of physical stuff, where there is awkwardness, or there is nonverbal, or there are ways that the emotion system functions and operates, the way it ingests sound and light. I'm very sensitive to sound and light. It's not a requirement to be considered autistic, but it's one of the more common ones. It's pretty broad-based that sound light overwhelms. Interoception. Other words that are big like that, which are like related to your body's internal signaling. So a lot of autistic people struggle with health issues related to that. They can't tell when they're hungry, or they can't tell what emotion their body's experiencing, or they experience, this isn't unique to autism, but they experience like taste as visuals, or they hear something and it creates sensations of tastes. So the whole brain nervous system interwoven thing, this whole signaling process is just a bit jumbled, and that creates deficits and it creates surpluses, I guess. I don't know if this is offensive here. I told one person, I said, that might be offensive. So, but just hang with me. Autism is a little bit like you have 100 houses in a neighborhood built at the same time. You're going to assume the electrical wiring is roughly the same, right? House to house. But in 1 to 2%, and again, this is a bit too unique to autism because it's actually probably more spread, but in 1 or 2 of those houses, it's like instead of the same electrician, you had 2 electricians. They didn't coordinate and they were drunk. So you got wired up in a way where something is just a miss somewhere, but also, see, again, that doesn't sound about right, but just saying, like, it can take so many different forms. And yes, there are patterns and there are kind of commonalities. So and sometimes that creates someone like and this is speculative, and I've read a few articles about it, and they're very clear to say this is speculative. Like Einstein was known to have some light and noise sensitivities. There's a pretty good chance he was an autistic person. Nikola Tesla, horrible with money. He died poor. Fucking, I would say better than Einstein in genius level. I don't know why that's a competition, but that guy had some serious mental powers that he was using. And this is where the myth and some autistic people embrace this concept. Okay, valid. I'm not going to fight too hard about it, but others find it clumsy, to put it lightly, I guess, or maybe they're offended. But the whole notion of it being a superpower or having the ability, because people tend to assess someone based on detectable output. And I hate that idea, though, that a disabled person has to validate their existence because they're exceptional at something or because they're producing something for the world in that way. You exist. You fucking exist. That's all anybody needs to deserve a right to dignity. And we should build a world built to make anybody who is existing dignified is a world we would all be able to experience that. I'm going on way too fucking much. Clearly this shit has been on my brain for a while. I have a lot to say. I haven't even gotten to my poem. More from this guy, but just I'll let this one finish.
A person with full-blown autism. I've seen many people with Asperger's and, you know, on the spectrum who are my age. I've never seen anybody with full-blown autism. That means nonverbal, non-toilet trained.
Okay, sorry. And you know what they would do with autistic people, people who are neurodivergent, people with mental illness issues over the years? Institutionalize them. Homeless, abandoned, but put them into, like, you would just get shipped off. Throughout history, there's all sorts of cases and studies, you know, like anecdotes and stories where cultures here and there, although I think more indigenous cultures had a far more, you know, humane way of approaching people who were different for all, not just autistic people, but they would be institutionalized where there was abuse and neglect and horrible experimentation and treatment. And of course, there's a huge racial component to the autism story as well, obviously, in this country, America particularly. That's why they used to think, oh, it was just like a white boy thing. And, you know, this type of person who made you uncomfortable because they're a little bit weird and you can't quite feel super comfortable around them until they're gone. And then it's a childhood thing. That's kind of what I thought it was. I never really knew what it was. I never thought about it. All I knew was I was glad I wasn't autistic. But I knew what I didn't know, meaning I knew my library shelf was empty. That what little I knew was barely anything, but I never thought about it. Hardly ever. My dad mentioned it once. We were in a car driving, and he just said, talking about some, you know, family the family knows, and said, yeah, I think that's one kid might be autistic. And I just remember going, oh, well, hope he's okay. That was about it. And then 17 years later, making that, you know, something, you know, over a decade later, I'm in bed one night. My life is fucking going to nightmarish hell. I'm only lucky to have a roommate who is patient, who trusts that I'm going to somehow pay him back, or I'd be living at my dad's house. I'm so grateful for this, for my roommate. And I tap on the word autism because I'm like, yeah, I've never actually really learned what it was. And then I read an article that, like, almost pitch perfect described my entire life of struggles to a degree that I had never expected. It was the most stunning moment of my life. It was like a lightning bolt hit me. Some people go through a awareness of it. They don't think they're autistic. And eventually they kind of get their head around it, maybe some new information, but they have an idea. That's pretty common. Another way is people we're screening for it more now with children. So their kids are being assessed and they're learning a lot about it. And they go, wow, geez, all this stuff I'm learning about my kid's autism, it's like, I was just like this and I have these issues too. And that's a big way people learn about what they are, or learn what they are, you know, adults who discover. I didn't have any of that. I just had a little moment of curiosity. I had been on TikTok for about a month, and people talking about neurodivergence was catching my eye, and the algorithm found me. But I looked up neurodivergence, saw the word autism, tapped on it, and my life changed. It was the most important thing that's ever happened to me. And then you go through this whole process of re-experiencing every memory. And I got a really big, strong brain for old memories and old feelings. It's a really weird thing to go through. If you're not... Yeah, living as an autistic person is tough and difficult. And in knowing as a child, I would have spared myself so many decades of really rough brain, internal narrative that drove a lot of difficulty. So, like, by far the hardest part about it was not knowing. And it accurately kind of mapped it too in so many ways. I know, I can't stop myself here. Keep going.
You don't see these people walking around a mall, because they don't exist in our age, or they're very, very rare. They do exist, but they're rare, so rare that I've never seen one.
Really? At the Falconry Hut? You fucking rich bitch? Never seen one? I don't say highly disabled.
On intellectual disabilities my entire life. And anybody with common sense, Sean.
There was one clip here where he talks about it. He calls it an epidemic. That's what I thought that one was. But let's just jump ahead. Now we're April 16th. God damn it. I can't reach my... Wait a minute. I thought it was... Okay. Well, I fucked all this up. But this is the one where he talks about how autistic people are bad at being cogs in the capitalist machine. That's my phrasing, that is. Listen to this asshole.
Sir, this is an individual tragedy as well. Autism destroys families. more importantly, it destroys our greatest resource, which are our children.
Yeah, sure.
These are children who should not be suffering like this. These are kids who, many of them were fully functional and regressed because of some environmental exposure into autism when they're 2 years old.
Not true. No, that's not at all true.
And these are kids who will never pay taxes. They'll never hold a job. They'll never play baseball. They'll never write a poem. They'll never go out on a date. Many of them will never use a toilet unassisted.
That part is true. I have a team of penguins that helps me poop. They hold little pieces of toilet paper and they go, and it, yeah. So he's right about that one.
And we have to recognize we are doing this to our children.
We have to stop torturing our children with this disease that is killing them and that is making them bad tax. They're not paying.
I've paid lots of fucking taxes. Can I get a goddamn refund, RFK? I've written poetry. I've dated. I'm pretty good at dating. I'm really funny. I'm a good listener, actually. Believe it or not, I really am. Because I'm interested in people. I love knowing how people work. I told a story about playing softball. It's very precise, like a Elden Scrolls build that just plays softball, pays taxes, has a job, writes poetry, goes on dates, wipes his own ass. The way you support autistic people is money, healthcare, housing, decommodify basic needs, detach the rat race of capitalism from their existence. This would be good for everybody. Accommodations for work, awareness, early screening for children. As I said, my life would have been so much better for me if I had known at an earlier age that it wasn't just some fucking psycho. I thought I was just this loser weirdo who couldn't deal with things, and I was depressed a lot, and I dealt with that and not in healthy ways at times. Now I know I just have to regulate my exposures, my tendencies, and plan for being burnt out, plan for it costing me when I need to go somewhere. I just going one place in a day is just like a major journey for me nowadays. I used to, and it's changed. And there's a complex kind of process people go through as adults who unmask either voluntarily or involuntarily. And actually, I do think there's a regression to that, not the kind of regression he's talking about, but the poetry is bullshit. The brains of autistic people, not all, but some and many, can produce phenomenal word language and word powers. In fact, I would say among the earliest things, when they do look for diagnostic evidence, they look for stories from childhood. There's a thing called CPTSD, chronic post-traumatic stress disorder, which can present symptoms that are similar in ways like sensitivities, developing, not phobia, it's not the right word, but like changes to your kind of being, your bearing, where you don't want to go out into the world, or people stress you out, where you don't like being seen. Like there's sort of other sort of things, because this is all like I said, this is like studying black holes. There's like the psychology of it is much less precise than studying calculus, right? So that doesn't mean, but most autistic people have CPTSD because it's inherently traumatic kind of social dysregulation. But I have all these symptoms going back, or all these indicators going back to childhood. And one of the first ones, my mom used to talk about, I was such a cute little baby boy because I was speaking full sentences before other kids were barely talking. The phrase she would say, I would say to her would be, "What are we going to do for the holiday?" And I was like 1.5 or something. I was like this little freak boy speaking full fucking sentences. That's called hyperlexia. It's not a bad thing. And you wouldn't necessarily run to the doctor because I got a fucking fruit fly. God damn it. I got to vacuum them a little harder out of the plant. It's not a bad thing. But that's clearly my vocation, which I hope becomes podcasting and writing and doing and using that as a skill. I had very good English skill, like in not just enunciating, I'd say, but like in school, I was always advanced for that. really good at spelling. You know, I had that sort of lane. My brother, and I don't think he's autistic, but he was a math genius. He was like way ahead. Like he was finishing like high school math, like it's like freshman year or something, or like sophomore. He was like, and yeah. So I'm a word guy. I'm an autistic wordsmith. So I wrote a poem, an answer. It's called Suck My Dick, Nipple Worm. Here it goes. This is my answer to RFK Jr. F you, motherfucker ass motherfucker. Suck my autistic ass piece of shit. Lick my balls, ass worm nipple motherfucker. You. You. Your whole head. Evil family. You whale harvesting motherfucker. Stupid ass head. Your falconry. Your wealth. Ass motherfucker. Violets are blue. Autistic people can write poetry. RFK Jr. All right, read this article, guys. Please. Put a little understanding. And like I said, don't let your discomfort become confidence. Let your discomfort become curiosity. Let's move it on. Pretty good poetry. I wrote that in college.